Please join me in welcoming Governor Ned Lamont to the podium.
Thank you, Kim. Well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank everybody who hasn't been formally thanked yet here tonight, so you don't feel left out. And I would have worn a tie if I had remembered what 130th anniversary and how important an event this is. Let me just tell you, this is about my 90th day on the job, and tell you a little bit about what I've learned and what my priorities are, and maybe get a chance to get some feedback from some of you. Hey, Chris. I'm the first business guy that's had the opportunity to lead this state going back an awful long time. And my number 1, 2, and 3 focus is to get this state growing again. We have been a jobs laggard going back well over a generation now. And if we had just had the same economic growth, average growth, same as our peers, same as our neighboring states, we'd be talking about what to do with our surplus. And instead, we have not had that job creation. We have not brought back the jobs that we lost back in 2008. We have about the same number of people working as we had a generation ago. And we're confronting a $3.5 billion deficit. So I don't want to ruin your dinner, but I might as well just tell you a little bit about what we're meaning to do about that. I put forward, I think, about a month ago, one of the first honestly balanced budgets in an awful long time in the state. It's a budget that is not just for the next 2 years, but I think it's a budget that could keep us in balance for the foreseeable future. And that's something we haven't done. There's no gimmicks, there's no fixes, there's no pushing, expenses into the future, taking the revenues, none of those type of games. And one of the first things we had to do, and I'll hit this, right off the bat, is the fact that our fixed costs are going up like this and our revenues are going like that. And that was a recipe for disaster as a state. And a lot of our business leaders knew it. And a lot of the business leaders who I've reached out said it's really something we've got to get control of. When GE left, that was one of the things they said. Connecticut doesn't have its fiscal house in order. So the first thing that we tried to do was, take our long-term pensions, especially the teacher's pension, make sure we don't have a fiscal cliff that we were confronting a few years out, stretch that over a period of time, fix those costs over the next 25 years, and make sure our fixed costs are not an increasing part of our budget, but a decreasing part of our budget. Number 2, working closely with labor. We've hit hard on our health care costs, one of the biggest pieces of growing like this again. And I think you're going to find that with some significant reforms, we're able to bring down the high cost of our state employee health care plan, over $50 million in this current budget, well over $100 million in the second half of our biennium. And this is what's so important to getting our fixed costs under control. The third thing we've done, as you maybe have heard, is we've been on a bit of a bond binge as a state for an awful long time, and it's time to go on a debt diet. And this is going to be tough. So we just had our first bond commission, my first bond commission hearing today. It's something that I can control as a governor. And over the last 8 years, our bonding has increased by well over $600 million a year, driving up those fixed costs dramatically. And today we had our my first bond commission meeting. It was the shortest meeting in recorded history. We bonded, 50%, 60%, 70% less than they had done before. We're gonna bond. We're gonna do what we have to do, but these are gonna be investments in growth, economic opportunity, and development to get this state moving again. There's an awful lot of nice-to-haves out there, and Harry, I love you, man, but we'll do what we can for Norwalk, but the nice-to-haves are going to have to take care of yourself, man. I've also got to tell you in this budget, it's the smallest increase in the last generation. It's well below the rate of inflation, despite some of those fixed costs going up like this. And we're just getting started in terms of what we got to do to get our costs under control as a state. We have a whole new group of people that are taking the lead in state government. There's a sort of a one office in state government that really doesn't get much notoriety. It's called the Department of Administrative Services, DAS. And they do IT, they do personnel, they do contracting. It never seemed all that exciting. And it's often, somebody, maybe a former deputy mayor or state senator has been in that job. I've got a guy named Josh Jabal in that job. He spent 12 years at IBM. He created a platform for bringing a lot of tech platform to business. And that's the person we have running DAS right now. And one of the few places we are making real investments is going to be in the IT and turning our paper-oriented government into a digital government. We have sort of like 2,000 different transactions. Each and every one of you know how slow transactions can be with state government. You're waiting and waiting and waiting, then it's usually a paper transaction. You often have to get a notary. It costs you a fortune. I went through that when I was starting my business and remember how frustrating that could be. So with Josh Jabal at the helm, we're going to be able to move more and more of our government into moving away from a Sears Roebuck government, moving towards an Amazon government, where all those transactions can take place online in real time at less cost. And the first government in the world that's got the first all online government, Estonia. Okay, who would have thunk it? We're going to be the second to get that done. It's also an opportunity because over the next 3 or 4 years, about 30%, 1/3 of our workforce is scheduled to retire. That's something like 15,000 people. And woe is us, that's maybe a bit of a threat. I also see it as an extraordinary opportunity as we figure out who we have to replace, who we don't have to replace, and what's the type of person we want to replace? Probably folks with more IT and computer-oriented skill sets as we change the nature of state government. We think about what we should be doing in-house and what perhaps the not-for-profit community can do. Barely some of you represented here today. We're thinking a lot about transportation and what we should be doing ourselves and what we should be doing as a public-private partnership. So I think I can tell you that we're just getting started, and your state government's going to look very different over the next 4 and 8 years, given that opportunity. A smaller, leaner state government delivering a much better customer service to folks that need it. And I'll tell you something else. When it comes to getting this state moving again, we have a whole different orientation towards economic development. And I need each and every one of you to be champions for this state. I need the business community to help take the lead. Nobody can help sell the state like fellow business people. And I know we've taken our lumps. I know what happened when GE left. I know what happened when Aetna was driving their moving vans out of state. And we were all pretty down on ourselves. But we recruited a company called Infosys. They trained people in IT skills. So they decided to locate their major IT training hub in Hartford, Connecticut. Aetna turned around the moving vans, and all of a sudden people are not leaving the state of Connecticut because they can't get the job force with the skills they need. They're bringing folks now that's going to start coming to Connecticut because of the workforce that we have in place. And I got a lot of business leaders who have signed up, and I need more of you to sign up. I had a friend named Jim Smith. He was retired from Webster Bank. He had lent to many of you, and I think companies across the state. And Jim Smith knew all the major CEOs across this state. And aiding, abetting him as co-chairman of our economic development effort is a great friend of mine. I went to school with her years ago, named Indra Nui. Indra was CEO of Pepsi. She retired for an hour or two before I said, we need you for the state of Connecticut. And she has global connections around the country and around the world. And she is a champion for this state. She loves to tell the story about how when she got off the plane from India, arrived at Kennedy Airport, and got one of those big, taxis to come up here, and the driver said, "You're going to Connecticut. You are the luckiest person in the world. I've always dreamed that I could live in the state of Connecticut, and maybe, Indra, if you're incredibly successful, you'll get an opportunity to live in Connecticut as well." And that's the message she says. That was the Connecticut that we love and remember, and that's why she is a champion for the state. And truth be told, I'm sort of the warm-up act here this evening for David Lamont. David has just joined us about 4 days ago or something, where he was accepted by the state Senate as our next Commissioner of Economic and Community Development. Brings a totally different background to folks who have had this job. You know, he comes out of Wall Street. That was a little controversial for the folks up in the legislature. He knows business. He knows a lot of the leaders across the state. He knows public-private partnerships. He knows economic opportunity zones, some of which are right here in town, ways we can take advantage of the maximum tax advantages offered by the federal opportunity zones, leverage what we're doing in the state to go forward so people are bring their jobs and business and economic opportunity right here. So we've got the team to do it. We've got a budget that's in balance for the long term. Bob Duffin, I need your help. I'm going to make sure the legislature gets this budget through in a cohesive way. I'm working like heck with all the business leaders in terms of workforce development to make sure we are training the people for the jobs that are there. Look, our fiscal house may be a bit of a mess up in Hartford, but I can tell you something, the economy's pretty strong. And we have tens of thousands of really good paying jobs that are going begging right now because we're not training the people for those jobs. So I make a deal. In terms of the folks who are doing the hiring, you tell me the skill set you need. We'll create community college and other programs to train people for the jobs you've got. And I got to tell you, we got 10 major businesses that have already taken us up on this offer. And when a kid comes out of that school, when he comes out with a certificate, laser welding, whatever is needed, electric boat, and Stanley Black & Decker and others are forgiving their student loan. I can't afford to make community college free, but with our friends in the business community, we're giving kids the incentive to go do what they got to do and stay here in the state of Connecticut. You know, we have a hard time recruiting young people when they're in Boston or New York. We have thousands that come to Connecticut every year for one of the greatest educations in the world. And we have to do a better job of keeping them here. And that's what we're trying to do. And I'll tell you one last thing that's really important to economic development, and that is getting our transportation system moving again. You know, it takes you 15 minutes longer to take the train from Norwalk to, New York than it did just 20 years ago. Longer still from, New Haven. Tougher to get around. We got to do everything we can to speed up transportation from Hartford, New Haven, Stamford, all the way down to New York. Get the backbone of the state moving again. Do everything I can to end the gridlock on I-95. And that's going to be a priority. I've heard that from virtually every business leader I've talked to. Ned, next to getting your fiscal house in order and making sure we can have the workforce we need, you got to speed up transportation. So there are a couple of ways you can pay for that. You could not pay for it. You could just not do it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, I don't think we can do that any longer. We had a transformer go down in Westport just a few days ago that almost shut down Metro North. And it takes us only 9 months to get a new transformer. We're able to jury-rig a system so the trains are going okay for now, but it shows you we got a thin margin for error. We can raise gasoline taxes, which is what they're doing in a lot of other states. We can bond more and borrow more, but that's the opposite of what we ought to be doing, I think. So that's why we're going to have a pretty good, robust debate up in Hartford over the next couple of months about one other way that we could pay for the important transportation upgrades we need to do, and that's electronic tolling. And electronic tolling on just I-95, 91, some of our major thoroughfares, paid for 40% by the out-of-staters. I told Charlie Baker and Andrew Cuomo, I've been subsidizing your roads and bridges for a long time. I'd like to return the favor and give you the opportunity to help us out as well. And I know you're convinced that everything we do goes to waste, and we're going to borrow that money and put it somewhere else and pay for old legacy costs. And I know the rap on government because I come from business and I had the same cynicism. But I got to tell you that this is an investment that's key to make. Every dollar is going to go right into transportation. It'll be part of a public-private partnership. That money goes to pay for the private sector that is building and renovating those roads. and accelerating our rail service. We got an amazing new head of transportation. He came out of Metro North. He was president of Metro North. He gives us the best opportunity to accelerate our rail service again, and we can make a big difference there over the next 3-5 years. Right now, these trains slow to a crawl over these 90-year-old bridges. We can do an awful lot better than that, and we can do it now. So look, thank you for somebody. Look, I think I'm going to leave it at that, but I just, you land on applause. I just tell you that I'm really proud to be your governor, and I don't want to understate the scale of what we got to do to get this state back on track. And I know the worry that a lot of us have, especially coming out of the small business world. But we've got a lot of great things going. We've got an amazing team up there, and we're going to take the hard knocks. We're going to push like heck to get this thing going again, and I need the help of each and every one of you to do it. And at the end of 4 years, I think you're going to have a sense of what this state is looking like, how we got out of this ditch, and how we got this state moving again. So thank you, everybody. And I can take a couple of questions if you want, or I see some pretty good-looking wine on your tables, too. So maybe, what would you like?
Hi, Governor. My name is Tom. I became president of a company about the same time you took over at the state. And minimum wage is a big issue. I mean, we're a manufacturer. Thank you. We're a manufacturer, and you've got to understand that we're competing against other states. And I know New England in general has higher minimum wage, but the rest of the country has lower minimum wage. Other countries don't have minimum wage, and it's hard to compete. And I know you talked about a $15 minimum wage. Oh my God! Because new employees come in at 15. Other employees that are at 12, 13, 14, now they're at 16, 17, 18. It makes a big difference, and I'm just wondering if you can comment on that.
Yeah, let me comment on that. I'm working with Gina Raimondo and Charlie Baker in New York and all the other governors in the region, moving towards a $15 minimum wage. I'm working with the Fiscal Commission, the business leaders, and they said if you do it on a slow and methodical way. They recommended phasing it in over 4 years, which is right now what my recommendation is to the legislature. I've thought a lot about having apprenticeship wages and other ways that we can give young people that first rung in the ladder an opportunity. And I'd like you up there in Hartford. I'd like you talking to the Republicans and the Democrats. I think it's a place we're going to end up like most of our neighbors do. I think it gives people a better opportunity to take care of their families, a little less need for a subsidy from the state in terms of earned income tax credit and Medicaid and things like that. Saves us a little money over the long term and gives people just that best opportunity. But I want to do it in a way that is done slowly, thoughtfully, and methodically, working closely with the business community to make sure it gets done in a way that's done right. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned bridges. There's a bridge in town that people refer to as the $1 billion boondoggle bridge. I wonder, it was set up under the previous administration. Is that a closed case? Is it done? You know about the bridge, or you want to look at the bridge? Are there other options you'll consider?
It's called the Walk Bridge. I got the right one? Yeah. I've talked to Harry about this. I'll tell you what here's the thought. It's a lift bridge. Lift bridge adds a little bit of adds a lot of cost as far as I can figure out to the cost of that bridge. And I'm told there's an occasional sailboat goes by there. So all of which are reasons to say this is crazy. This is the type of boondoggle that makes people really cynical about government. I talked to the Secretary of Transportation down in Washington, and And, you know, they just said, you know, it's also a navigable waterway, and the Coast Guard would have to give you a clearance. It would take 3 or 4 years, 5 years to make a change. So I haven't made up my mind on that. I really haven't. I mean, it's an important bridge to keep rail moving fast and to upgrade our transportation system. But I share a lot of the same distress as you do, that this is not the way to run a railroad.
You'll take a look at it?
Yes, sir. Hey, with that, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. I love Norwalk. We got a lot of cities that are really in distress. We got a lot of small towns that are losing population. Not Norwalk. You've got the wind at your back. You got a lot of growth. You got a lot of opportunity. I'll be coming back as often as I can. This is a showcase for what Connecticut can be. Thank you, everybody.